call this meeting to order. The regular meeting of the Mayor and Council for Monday, December 10th, 2018. Can I please ask everybody to rise for a moment of silent prayer? Is that tonight we remember Sally Tarpey, mother of Roger Tarpey, who works for DPW. Steve, can you read us the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been made by sending notice on December 18 to the 2015 to the Ridgewood News and the Record by positioning on the bulletin board in the lobby of the Borough Hall and filing a notice of the same with the municipal clerk. I'd like to remind all members of the public that we have 3 fire exits in the council chambers, 1 on each side of the dais and 1 in the rear. Roll call, please.
Councilman Barloni?
Here.
Councilwoman Bastide? Here. Councilman Canigo?
Here.
Councilwoman Davis? Here. Councilman Gordillo?
Here.
Councilman Papaleo?
Here.
And Mayor Mignon?
Here. Will please move resolution 18-360, resolution going to closed session, exclude the public for the purpose of discussion and disclosures under the Open Public Meetings Act.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yes. I'm going to skip down also. Could we do a resolution? Motion to approve the minutes of the Mayor and Council regular and work session of November 19th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention? So we already had, council already voted to promote Officer Griffith to Sergeant, so it'll be my pleasure now to give him the oath of office. Place your left hand in the Bible, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I, Dennis Griffith, do solemnly swear
I, Dennis Griffith, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith
and will bear true faith
and allegiance to the same,
and allegiance to the same,
to the government established in the United States
in the United States
and in this state
and in this state,
under the authority of the people.
and the authority of the people.
I, Dennis Griffith, do solemnly swear
I, Dennis Griffith, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
impartially,
impartially,
and justly perform
and justly perform
all the duties
all the duties
as a sergeant in the River Edge Police Department
of the sergeant in the Riverhead Police Department
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Anything else, Chief, or? Okay, well, congratulations, Sergeant, and we're proud to have you in our leadership ranks with the police department, and we know you'll carry on in the great tradition that the River Department has always had. So, congratulations and best of luck to you. Something I said.
They knew what you get going when the goodie going was good.
We'll continue with appointments and personnel changes. A motion to approve the separation of Thomas Decker, labor, from the Department of Public Works effective November 20th, 2018.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to approve the salary change of Matthew Millick from his annual patrol officer 17th grade salary of $56,038. Patrol officer 16th grade, $64,443, effective December 8th, 2018.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to approve the resignation of Lisa Solikowski, Deputy Court Administrator, effective December 31st, 2018.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion to approve the appointment of Lauren Cerullo to the Recreation Commission from alternate one to fill the unexpired term of Chris Ild through December 31, 2019.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And a motion to approve the appointment of Anna Delia to the Recreation Commission as number one to fill the unexpired term of Lauren Cerullo through December 31, 2019, effective December 11, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? On the agenda, we have several pieces of correspondence that are available for review through the clerk's office. Also on file are monthly reports for the Historic Commission for October 2018, Tax Collector 2018, and the Shade Tree Commission, April, May, and September 2018. We have no ordinances on for first reading this evening, and we have no ordinances on for second reading this evening. We have resolutions 18-361 to 18-382, proposed to be approved by consent. If any member of council would like to pull out any of these for separate discussion or vote, please say so.
I have a question. The amendment 380, what change would take place there?
I'm anticipating that there'll be, if the wood is, if we go out to bid, then the inspection work that'll be required.
Okay.
Hire contract for design, or topographic specification, that sign to go forward, we will move this as part of it. If you decide not to go forward, we would just rescind this portion.
It's also, because we put the money in this year's budget, we'd rather encumber it now, so we don't have to re-budget again next year. If we don't use it, we don't use it, but we can better to encumber it now. Is there a motion to approve the resolution by consent?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Three. Councilman Bartoloni,
One
for
last
the
time.
final time, will you please read and move resolution 18-383, payment of bills?
Whereas vouchers for the payment of goods and services rendered to the Borough of River Edge have been received, and whereas each bill has been checked by the receiving department, approved by the Chief Financial Officer and Borough Clerk, and reviewed by the 3 members of the Finance Committee, now therefore be it resolved that bills as listed now be confirmed for payment from the appropriate funds as follows. Current account, $644,520.06. Capital account, $278,472.17. Recreation account, $2,226.05. Trust other account, $26,427.51. Open space account, $9,644. Trust other developers account, $1,210. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor.
Can I have a motion to open the hearing to the public, please?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any members of the public would like to make a comment, ask a question? Now is the time to do so. If not, motion to close the hearing, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, council comments. Councilman Kanigo.
Nothing at this time, thank you.
No?
I said I have a motion both.
Oh, okay.
First of all, the tree, Christmas tree lighting ceremony, wonderful event. Enjoyed that so many citizens and also the scouts. And thanks to the fire department for hosting Santa. And also yesterday for going through town. There were many, many pictures on Facebook today of families and Santa. I met with Chief O'Connell regarding the 2019 budget. And also as far as their November report, they had 23 alarms and 3 drills. And Lieutenant Richard Mearhout completed incident command for hundreds. So he's now authorized to be an incident commander. Captain Greg Caridi completed the 8-week building construction class at Bergen County Fire Academy. And this is a great asset to the department, especially now with the new type of lightweight construction, building construction. Former chiefs Rick Berry, Neil Carroll, and Mark Mitchell completed safety officer certifications. River Ridge Ambulance Installation Dinner will be January 11th at the Brownstone. SCORE, I went there today and I spoke to the seniors and dropped off the at-risk flyers and explained to them what it was all about and to call Arlene Faustini either themselves or the River Ridge Alliance meeting, I'm going to report on this like the other meeting. But the one thing I wanted to say is that we heard from Kira McGinty and Sherry Sue, Chow, on their attendance at the fall MTI Leadership Conference, and it was very inspiring to hear them speak in depth about what they learned, and their report was excellent, and they have a desire to start a student-run club at Riverdale, and it was amazing hearing from them, so there'll be more to come on that. We're going to have one back.
Do you think we should bring them to a work session and come forward?
They're going to come back one more time, we suggested, to the Alliance, because we want a connect, we want a plan.
Okay.
They were ready to go.
Not even so much for that, at least maybe just talk about the
Yeah.
other experiences too.
But I think we can, but I think we should wait.
Yeah, it wouldn't be until the end of January at this point anyway.
Right, so we can, ask him to do that, but it was awesome to hear him speak. And also, I want to give a special thank you to El Guardione for all of the efforts and the hard work that you have done regarding the community center and also work on the technology here at the Borough Hall. Now you can watch us on TV. Unfortunately, it didn't happen while you were here, but you certainly deserve the credit for doing so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just for the council's information, last year, the River Ridge Recreation Commission, at the request of Little League, named the field at Memorial Park the Pete Marin Memorial Field. The second part of that memorialization is they would like to put a plaque on the snack stand with his image. I don't think this needs to be approval from. They just wanted to make sure that we were still all aware that they were going to do that, so I'm just making everybody aware they're going to move forward with that.
Consensus? Consensus?
Yes. The only comment I'm going to make is to thank Councilman Bartoloni for his 6 years of service to the residents of River Ridge. It's been a pleasure to work with you. I think we've accomplished some really good things. I've always appreciated your support on issues I've brought to the council, so thank you for that, and I hope you continue your volunteer efforts in the borough to make River Edge a better place. So thank you very much, and enjoy your freer time.
Thanks.
Thanks, jealous.
Thank you. I'd like to congratulate Beautification, especially Michelle Curdy and Greg Curdy on everything that they've done in connection with the tree lighting as well as decorating of the borough at the library and in other locations. They do a tremendous work. I'd like to thank DPW for what it did putting up the aluminum tree. We have two trees. We have the evergreen and we have aluminum, and all the work that they did in preparation for this, as well as compliment Carolyn for the great job she did organizing it. I love seeing the marching band there. I love always seeing the Girl Scouts singing. It is my favorite annual borough event. And it's really just great, and the cooperation between the fire department, thanking the fire department for emptying the bays, preparing the space so that rec can come in and organize it, and then getting Santa all across town this Saturday. So I want to thank the fire department for that. So for this holiday season, it's really, really wonderful. So thanks to all of them, and to our police department for standing out in the cold and keeping the area safe. So appreciate it. Al, I want to thank you for everything you've done over the last 6 years. Finance Committee, Technology Community Center. I think everything you do is great, but I think especially long-lasting will be your legacy for finance and how you worked to help us have a more conservative system of budgeting and to protect the borough and the citizens and to guide the council for decades to come. I just want to say thank you for that.
Councilman Gautier.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, the tree lighting was a wonderful event. Thank you to our DPW, our beautification committee, our rec department did a great job, and of course the fire department as well. Congratulations to Sergeant Griffith, who took the oath of office tonight, and I'm sure he will continue to do a great job. And I would also like to thank Councilman Bartoloni for his years of service. Thank you.
All right.
I'll go first. You can have the last word. How about that? Okay?
All right, fair enough.
Okay. I've been referring to Al lately as the Grover Cleveland of River Edge for his 2 non-consecutive terms in office. And that, I know he's probably not anticipating or even wanting to ever consider another run, but he's already welcome to. We ran together 3 times. It's been a rough year. Losing Vito, losing John. Thankfully, we're losing you, but we're not losing you the same way things go. Suffice to say, there's nothing more I need to say publicly about you. I know the value you brought to the council. I know what you did for this town. We would not be in the position, we were not merely just assisting. You showed the leadership to get us where we are financially today. You helped direct the policies that got us to where we are today. You took the hard votes that we had to take to get where we are today. And from one of the architects of a zero increase budget, I don't know more what you could have done for the people of River Edge than you did. So, anyway, good luck.
Thank you.
2019 is right around the corner, and there will be some opportunities to run for council again. And remember, the only reason I ran for mayor is when you told me, when I got you the promise to run for council again. So, I appreciate that too. Thanks.
Just first, I want to congratulate Sergeant Griffith. Carolyn, I sent her an email right after the event. It was fantastic. She did a fantastic job. I always love it. I got my selfies with Frosty and Rudolph. And Joe got to see Santa. And it was actually nicely organized, actually, this year in terms of getting up to Santa, so just did a fantastic job. And thank you to the fire department for their help and their role with that, and bringing Santa around. They do a good job with that, so I want to thank them for that. I don't normally write things down, even when I'm giving an opening or closing. I don't write things down, but I wanted to tonight, so be a little easier. I want to thank the people of River Edge for allowing me to serve them again these past 3 years. The time goes very quickly. And I want to thank all the borough employees for all their hard work and their dedication, which makes this job immeasurably easier. And I especially want to thank Alan and Stephanie and Judy and Tom for all of their assistance. It really does make this job that much easier. I want to thank my wife Sarah for always supporting me, and to my children for understanding when Daddy had to go to a meeting. And a special thanks to my daughters, Abby and Chloe, who were my campaign staff this year. They walked with me every weekend, knocking on doors and just keeping me company. And despite the outcome, those memories alone made it all worth it. Last year around this time, I started to contemplate, what am I going to do? Am I going to run again for council? And, I was a political science major. I know what happens in midterm elections, and particularly know how unpopular our current president is in this area. And I knew that anyone with an R after their name was going to have an uphill battle. And I knew that, not a lot of people know you. And they don't know your actual beliefs and what you stand for and where you are politically. In fact, no one's ever really asked me, to be quite honest. But I knew I would have that association. And I didn't put my name in until, I think, the very last day it was due. And I also felt like I'd accomplished many of my goals when I first set out running for council back in 2010. When I came onto the council in 2011, the borough's financial situation was bleak. A council person had described it as dire. Our surplus was gone, tax increases were high, there were furloughs and layoffs. And we now have a functional surplus. Our bond rating is fantastic. We just got the latest Moody's report. We've increased the complement of police officers. We reinvested in our DPW. And as the mayor mentioned this year, we had a 0 municipal tax increase. And as the finance chair over the last 2 years, and as a member of the finance committee for 5 years, I do like to think I played a significant role in turning around our financial position. But after we lost Vito, I started focusing on what I hadn't accomplished. Finishing the community center, expanding communication between the borough and residents, investing in girls' athletics, and finishing our TV channel. And I realized that I wanted to finish the things that I had started, and I realized that I still cared very much about trying to make this community even better. It's my belief that we all have a responsibility to our children, our friends, and our neighbors to make our community even better by using our God-given talents to help those around us. And up here, that means putting good governance over good politics. And that may be why I'm the Grover Cleveland of River Edge. I seem to be able to get elected, but I can't get reelected. But I've always tried to do what was right and making smart decisions. And I hope in my time that I've made things better, that I put doing what is right over what might be popular. I want to thank all of those who I've had the pleasure of serving with on this dais. over the last 6 years. I want to thank you for your friendship and your dedication to this job. This is not an easy job by any sense, particularly in the world of social media, where people have absolutely no problem taking a shot at you from the safety of their home. It's definitely hard. I want to thank the mayor for everything. He knows how I feel about him. He knows he's like a brother to me. I want to thank Mary for all of her years of service to the borough and for her support over the last year and for being such a guiding force on this council. Dario, I've enjoyed working with you on the council and particularly on legal matters affecting the borough. It's been nice having another attorney up here.
Feelings mutual.
And Tom, I want to thank you for your service to the borough. Joe, you stepped up and volunteered to fill in for Vito, which is not easy, and I wish you the best. And good luck to you, Ms. Kaufman, on this journey. Ellen, I skipped you on purpose. Several years ago,
Call me Charlie.
several years ago, Ellen beat me the first time I ran for re-election. And, you know, that was a good thing, both for me and also for the borough. It gave me a definite sense of perspective that I don't think I quite had my first term. But she's a dedicated public servant with excellent ideas, and it's been a pleasure working with you. And I'm proud to call you my friend. And that's the beauty of this council here, that despite party differences or party allegiances, you can put that aside, it doesn't matter. Good ideas trump politics. They trump, or they should. And that is a beauty of this council. All I can ask now is that this council makes the community center a reality. I know all of you have campaigned on it. And it will be something that will serve hundreds of thousands of residents over the next 100 years. It's a worthwhile project, so please see it through to the end. Continue to improve the borough website. Work with social media. Let people have the information they need to make informed decisions instead of forcing them to rely on half-truths and misinformation. Invest in girls' athletics. All you have to do is look at the discrepancy between the fields our girls play on and what is available to the boys. Change this. Show all the girls in this community that they matter, that their athletics matter. Work with the Board of Ed and the Rec Commission to make the improvements that are needed. And lastly, I just want to thank everyone a very happy holiday season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Still gonna look on the TV for a couple weeks.
Yeah, I'll still work on that.
Motion to adjourn regular meeting to go back into work session. Open closed session first. Yes.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll be in closed session for a few minutes first. Council, I have just adjourned from the closed session. We're going back into work session. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilman Bartoloni?
Here.
Councilwoman Steve? Here. Councilman Kamigo?
Here.
Councilwoman Davis? Councilman Verdier?
Here.
Councilman Papaleo?
Here.
And Mayor Mignon.
Here. Just want to make a note on our work session agenda. We have no items for discussion, no work session consent agenda. I am not giving a report. So quickly, if there's any unfinished business that anybody wants to bring up? Any new business anyone wants to bring up? All right, so we'll go to our main topic of discussion this evening. We have Mr. Costa here with Mr. Lee Klein, who will discuss the community center and the traffic study that was conducted at the request of the council at the meeting October 9th, I believe it was. Mr. Costa, the floor is yours.
Okay. Very quickly, based on that meeting, Mayor, good evening, everybody. I apologize for not having a jacket, tie, and everything. I flew off the airplane when the mayor said get here at 6 and stuff, and so I apologize. I didn't want to risk any indecent exposure trying to get dressed in the car. With that, at that last meeting, excuse me, we took some notes, we heard a lot from the public, and we made quite a few changes on this. Library, 14 spots. Go driveway connection to the 2 lots. The ambulance corps, because there was a discussion as far as the ambulance corps, how they would get there if they would pull in. So we separated the ambulance corps parking, what they have today, they will have tomorrow, if this is approved and we build it. There's an entrance, ingress and egress off the Continental. There's a drop-off for the bus, the senior bus, to the front of the building, or rather to the side of the building, or the walkway to get you to the front of the building. Basically, that's it, the circulation around the entire parking area. As far as the size of it, it's identical to the smaller plans that was in front of the council in the October meeting, just with those changes. Based on that, this was sent to Lee Klein, who's a traffic expert. He analyzed, I believe, all 8 or not 8 proposals of the different proposals, and then obviously try to hone in on this one to see, take the comments from the public and some of the other individuals that were at the meeting in October, try to incorporate that into the new plan, and that's what's in front of everybody tonight.
Who's over Klein, just for the benefit of the public and for the edification of council, just give us a little description of your background, your credentials, your experience in traffic engineering.
Certainly. My name is Lee, middle initial D as in Daniel, Klein, K-L-E-I-N. I'm a professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. I'm also a nationally certified professional traffic operations engineer. I've been before over 80 to 90 planning and zoning boards, both for applicants as well as for the board. Presented to Superior Court a couple of occasions, and my license is current, and my certification is current, and I prepared a traffic and parking evaluation of the proposed community center.
Anybody have any questions, Mr. Klein? That was qualifications background. Proceed.
Thank you. As Mr. Costa said, I was given, it was 8 scenarios of different site plan layouts with parking, access, all various accommodations of that. And I believe what you have in front of you now is scenario number 7. That's, I believe, the best plan, both from a traffic and circulation standpoint, as well as to accommodate the ambulance staff, access to and from Elm and Continental Avenue. It maximizes the parking, also provides a drop-off area, as Mr. Costa said, along the north side of the building, so that when the senior van comes, they can drop people off and they can walk from the van stop into the building. Based on the local ordinance, community center, it requires 1 parking space for every 2 seats. There's approximately 144 seats proposed in the community center, and that equates to about 72 parking spaces. We're providing 73. Again, 14 of them are in the front on Elm Avenue for the library, for all intents and purposes, and the others are distributed on the Continental side of the building, on the north side of the property. It's my opinion that the parking supply will be adequate to support the majority of the functioning of the community center, the majority of which will be smaller groups, mommy and me classes, meetings, and so forth. If they have a meeting or some kind of an event with 144 seats. We've got the 73 parking spaces. As long as we coordinate with the library, and the library's not having another function at that same time, I believe the site plan will be able to accommodate the demand of the community center. I believe there were some comments about the operation of the Elm Avenue driveway and the proposed Continental Avenue driveway. I did an analysis of those two driveways. I was able to obtain traffic volumes from the police department for a several-week stretch in October and November on Continental Avenue, on Elm Avenue, and also on Tenney Avenue. The police put out their radar detector device. It collects volume of traffic in both directions. They gave me that data. I sorted through that data and looked for basically 4 peak hours during the day. I wanted to find the peak hour sometime 1 hour between 7 and 9 in the morning commute time, 1 hour between 4 and 6 p.m., the evening commuting time. I also looked for an hour around 2, 3 o'clock when schools are ending in the afternoon, and also looked at an evening peak hour. I went out to maybe 7 or 8 in the evening to try to catch another hour of volume when maybe the community center might be entering or people might be exiting. But nonetheless, I estimated the trip generation of the community center based on the number of parking spaces. And I analyzed all 4 peak periods. I analyzed, even though the community center is not likely to be open between 7 and 9 in the morning, I analyzed that AM peak hour. Around 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there may be some activities, a mommy and me class or some sort of a meeting. But again, I estimated everybody would be coming in and everyone would be leaving during those 4 peak hours. So I think I did a very conservative analysis. I believe my analysis covers, like I said, all 4 hours of the day of a typical weekday. I also looked at trip generation numbers from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. They have library, they have community center, more of a recreational community center, which is more like a YMCA, which is gym and swimming pools and things like that. So I didn't feel that that was very representative of what this is going to be. So again, I think I was conservative in assuming that all 72 or 73 parking spaces would enter during that peak hour and also exit during that peak hour. So and in order to justify or to I guess I'll say replicate what would happen when there's an event at a certain time, I had within a 20-minute period everyone would arrive, and that same 20-minute period everyone would exit. So again, I think I was overly conservative in stating that I'm assuming that 1 hour between 7 and 9 in the morning, there may be an event, which there likely won't be, but there may be an event here. All 73 cars would come in. I even had 10 extra trips coming in for a drop-off and those vans leaving in that peak hour, and analyze those 4 hours. I also analyzed the intersection of Tenney Avenue and Elm Avenue during those 4 peak hours as well. The result of that analysis was during all 4 peak hours, the intersections of the driveway with Elm, the driveway with Continental, the intersection of Elm with Tenney, all operated at acceptable levels of service C or better, with the exception of 1 peak hour, the PM peak hour, Continental Avenue. It just tripped over the level of service C to a level of service D. It went from, which is, the cutoff is 25 seconds of average delay, and we're going to see an average delay of about 28 seconds. So for all intents and purposes, the driveways will operate at acceptable levels of service C or better. The intersection of Tenney Avenue as well, operating at, I believe, level of service B or better for those peak hours. One thing I didn't mention is the distribution. Based on the layout of the parking, and based the fact that it's a community center for this community, I had about 2/3 of the traffic use the Continental Avenue driveway, and about 1/3 of the traffic use the Elm Avenue driveway when I distributed my traffic in and out of those driveways. It's not exactly 2/3, 1/3, but I felt that based on people knowing that this is a local street, they could come in here, so it'd be a little bit more. Some people from the larger lot might come down and use Elm Avenue to go south into town, and others may, would use Continental Avenue. I generally set about 25% in each direction, east, west, north, south.
That's proportional to the number of spaces.
Correct, yeah, roughly, but again, some of the people might drive through the connector driveway and use Elm Avenue to go south rather than go out onto Continental, make a right, and then make a right onto. So I think I did a pretty good job of distributing that traffic to the two driveways. And again, we looked at 8 scenarios. Some of them combined the ambulance staff parking into one large parking lot with a driveway, and only one driveway would be shared. Others didn't have any access at all on Continental Avenue, without a driveway on Continental, but with the ambulance squad having access directly to Continental. I believe there may have been also an alternative where no access at all on Continental, and therefore the ambulance squad people would have to come in through Elm, drive through the lot, park, and then walk across the street. So I think this site plan number 7, scenario number 7, provides the best of everything. Like I said before, the drop-off area for the senior bus, a separate area, basically where the ambulance squad parks right now, access to Continental both directions, and Elm Avenue both directions, and again, levels of service operate acceptably at the driveway intersections as well as the intersection of Elm and 10. That's all.
So the council gets a little bit more understanding, can you review your figures with them in terms of what the actual traffic counts show, so they have an understanding of the order of magnitude of the numbers that vehicles that actually travel those routes over those peak hours?
Certainly. Figure 1 is just a location map. It's after page 7 of the report. Figure 2 is right after that. Figure 2 is it's a stacked figure. It's got the AM peak hour, the 1 hour between 7 and 9 in the morning at the top. The next set, and that includes the intersection of Continental Avenue with the site and Elm Avenue with the site driveway, the existing library driveway, as well as Tenney Avenue and Elm Avenue. And then I just duplicated that 4 different times for the different hours, the 3 to 4 school peak hour, 1 hour between 4 and 6 p.m., and then a later p.m. peak hour around 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. So those numbers are numbers that I had gotten from the police. I scanned very long reports because it was about a week's worth of data for each direction of each road. Scanned down looking for the highest number I could find during the 7 to 9 hour eastbound on Continental. Then I looked for the highest number westbound. It may have not even been the same exact hour, but I figured let me do the worst case scenario. On Elm Avenue, same thing, northbound and southbound traffic. Let me find the worst hour for that week's worth of data that I received, plug that in, and same with Tenney. So if you look, we've got an AM peak hour at the top. I'd call the other one maybe an after school, 3 to 4, maybe 2 to 3, 3 to 4 school hour, and then the evening commuter hour, and then again that one later PM peak hour. And then what I did is I looked at, go to figure 3, on the next page, I used a background growth rate of 1% per year from 2018 to 2021. I made an assumption that it would be about 3 years before the facility would be up and operating. So that's the future no-build condition without the site operating. And then if you move to figure 4, that's again those same 4 peak hours with the traffic distributed at the drivers. You can see I've got 31 vehicles making a right in from Continental, 31 making a left in from Continental, and then 31 making a left out, and 31 making a right out. And then proportionally it's less as you come in and out of the Elm driveway. And again, that's the 92 trips, which are I think one of the scenarios actually had 82 parking spaces, so I used that high number. We assumed 10 drop-offs for some kind of a senior van or some kind of a drop-off trip, so I ended up with 92 trips coming in and 92 trips leaving, again, in that same 1 hour, which is not likely to happen. Typically what would happen is people would come in, let's say for a 7 p.m. event, they'd start arriving 6:30, quarter to 7, and be here by 7, and then they wouldn't leave again until 9 p.m. But again, I did the worst of the worst of the worst. I looked at the worst volume, the highest volume, the highest trip generation of the site, and overlaid them on top of each other to come up with my levels of service. Table 1 on the next page is a sort of a tabular scenario of the different, summation of the different scenarios. The top row gives you the scenario numbers 1 through 8, and then below that are the total number of parking spaces, scenario number 1 having 80, 75 for number 2, and so on. The ambulance staff, whether it was co-located, meaning it was one large parking lot, or if it was separated, like in number 7. We also looked at two-way circulation driveways. Circulation within the site, 24 to 26 foot wide drive aisles, with the exception of that one 13-foot wide drive aisle. I don't think that'll be an issue, because as you come into the site, you'll be able to see, as you come in from, if you were to enter from Elm, and the Elm Avenue end was to be fully occupied, you'd pull in to the main large parking lot, and you'd be able to see up the row from 73 to 62, whether to continue up and park, or to go around that two-way drive aisle and look, let's say, in spaces 28, 29, 27 in the corner. So I don't think that one-way circulation for that one little area is going to be any kind of a detriment to circulation. And then the last one was whether it had a pickup or drop-off facility in front of the building. So that's that tabulation of those different scenarios. Then again, as I said before, we looked at the trip generation, that's table 2. I looked up a recreational community center of 6,400 square feet using the DOT trip generation numbers. And as you can see, the numbers are approximately 11 trips in the morning peak hour for a recreational community center of 6,400 square feet. In the evening, it may be 79 trips during the peak hour. But again, that recreational community center was more like a YMCA, meeting rooms, gymnasium. I think it even says there's swimming pools and so forth. So it's really not representative of what's here. But below that is the library. So I did the trip generation again based on a 14,605 square foot public library, 91 trips in the morning peak hour, 125 trips in the evening peak hour. And if you look at the totals, we've got about 102 trips during the morning peak hour and 203 in the evening peak hour. The numbers below that are the trip generation numbers that I analyzed. I looked at 92 trips coming in and 92 trips coming out. So in the morning peak hour, my numbers are greater than what ITE says. And even in the evening peak hour, with the exception of what would exit, again, during that PM peak hour, I think my numbers are pretty close to what the DOT numbers are shown in their trip generation numbers. And then the next page, table 3, is that level of service summary. Again, if you look, that table shows the 2021 future build conditions, the AM, the early PM, which is that 3 to 4 hour, 2 to 3 hour, evening peak hour from 4 to 6 PM peak, and then the late PM peak. And we have the intersections that I analyzed down the left side, Elm Avenue and the library community center driveway. Again, levels of service B or better for all 4 peak periods. For exiting for the exit driveway, and then the northbound left turn shares it with a through movement, making a left turn in, levels of service A. Move down to Continental and the proposed driveway. Again, levels of service C or better, except during the PM peak hour, which again it goes from it goes up to 28.1 seconds of delay, and that's just over the limit of the level of service C. So again, that's all acceptable, by the way. Levels of service D, C, B, and A are all acceptable levels of service. And then the Elm Avenue, Tenney Avenue intersection. Tenney Avenue is stop controlled. Again, levels of service B or better during all peak hours.
Mr. Klein, can you I think it looks like the 1 hour between 4 and 6 seems to be the worst case.
Correct.
Could you just go through the numbers on your figure here so it's in the record as to what the existing volumes are, where they're going, and then what you determined would be the build-out condition numbers?
Sure.
That one scenario, I think that's the worst case. So I think a lot of the folks on Penny, they want to know what the impact on Penny is primarily.
Absolutely. So if you look at figure 4, flip back a few pages to figure 4, it's the peak hour traffic and the build condition. If you look at the third group of intersections down the page, that's the 1 hour between 4 and 6 p.m. peak hour. The intersection of Tenney Avenue, I was able to get the traffic numbers from the speed data collection that the police put out. It's about 111 vehicles with the future growth numbers and with the trips from the community center heading westbound on Tenney Avenue. And then there's about 60 vehicles that are turning into Tenney from Elm Avenue. Again, that includes existing numbers, the future background growth, as well as the numbers from the community center itself. And then when you look at the turning movement numbers at the intersection, I plug those into an analysis software. The Highway Capacity Manual provides software, and those numbers, when I plug them in and do the analysis, they give us the results that are in Table 3. And again, Table 3 for the PM peak hour, for the intersection of Elm and Tenney during the PM peak hour, we're looking at levels of service A for the southbound left turn from Elm Avenue to turn left into Tenney, and for traffic to make the westbound left and shared right coming out of Tenney, we're looking at level of service B with an average delay of about 11.1 seconds.
Am I interpreting this correctly? If I look at figure 2, the actual traffic count that we measured with from the police is 103 trips heading westbound on Tenney,
That's correct.
and 53 eastbound.
That's correct.
Under the as-built conditions, 103 becomes 111 westbound, and the 53 eastbound becomes 60.
That's correct. If you flip from figure 2
Yeah, I'm reading the build. I'm
to figure 4, correct.
You're listening to the build.
Right.
And then in terms of coming down Tenney presently, coming down Elm presently is 170 cars in that 1 hour, 136 heading north. On the built condition then, so you're assuming that, maybe I'm being a little unclear, you have 30 cars coming out of the Elm driveway, 15
Correct.
going left, 15 going right.
Correct.
Now, the question is, out of those 15 then, how many would it be expected to go down Tenney?
I assume that about a third of those would make a left turn and go down Tenney, and about a third of the ones that are turning in to the site, making that quick turn from Tenney to Elm to the driveway, about a third of the, so about 5 vehicles in and out.
And most of the, like you said before, this is the way you split your proportion of parking, most of the traffic will be going out to Continental.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, just for clarification, I put a little note here next to my PM peak hour. On November 1st, from 3 to 4 p.m. was the 53 vehicles traveling east on Tenney, and from 4 to 5 p.m. was 104 vehicles traveling west on Tenney. So again, those weren't even the same hour, and they're not even really the hour. They were the greatest hour in that area. Numbers dropped off a little bit from 3 to 4, so I picked 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 in that area.
And you say in the narrative that days where traffic was lower, you excluded them.
Correct, like,
So
right.
it was Election Day, it was Halloween,
Correct.
teacher convention, so you took those out and those not to pull the numbers artificially down.
Correct, yeah, I searched down, there was, like I said, about 7 days each, and it was by hour, so 24 hours times 7, that's how many rows were in those spreadsheets, and I went down looking for the greatest hour that I could find on the weekday.
Do you have any thoughts, recommendations, suggestions on parking on Elm Avenue, continuing on the westerly side? And presently, parking is permitted on the north side of Continental and the south side during events. I guess my major question would be, if you maintain the parking on the south side of Continental, what's the line of sight for someone making a left out of driving onto Continental coming out of the community center?
The posted speed of Continental Avenue is 25 miles per hour. The design speed is 30. I believe it's approximately 300 feet of sight distance we need in both directions. You'd have to draw a sight triangle 14 and a half feet back from the curb line or from the travel lane, from the right-hand shoulder travel lane, back 14 and a half feet, and then draw that triangle, one to the left and one to the right, and then whatever's inside that triangle, you would restrict parking. Same with Elm Avenue, I would do the same exact thing.
We also had talked about the concerns with pedestrian crossing on Continental. If we were to council want to finish up the council,
Yeah, if there's any other questions before I get to that?
any questions about the analysis of them for trips, anything that we want to spoke about?
All right, so I'm going to go to the last page of my report is a shrunk down version of the traffic calming plan for Continental Avenue. Just go through some of the, this plan was prepared by Robert Costa's office. Basically what we're trying to do is we're trying to delineate travel lanes on Continental Avenue. Right now, there's no shoulder lines on Continental Avenue, it's just a center double yellow line. It gives the optical illusion, or it gives the driver this false sense that it's a nice wide open street, so I'm going to drive the speed that I feel comfortable. If you look at some of the literature on traffic calming, even things just like striping a shoulder line or allowing parking on the street helps to tighten the travel lane. So we're trying to get it down to two 12-foot travel lanes, one in each direction on Continental Avenue, in the area between Millbrook and Elm Avenue. We've got students that come from the school that like to cross, but they're not supposed to. We're trying to do it so that we can get the students to use the crosswalk. I think we need some, possibly some education in the school. I did a Google Street View of this area. At the time that I did it, there was a police car parked in the parking lot where the ambulance corps is. And I'm assuming that might have been around that 2 o'clock hour, and they know either the kids are coming or that traffic traveling along Continental may be traveling at a higher speed than they should be. So I think that by putting in the striping, additional signs, and I know there's a speed radar sign as you're approaching in the eastbound direction that tells you what your speed is. I drove below 25 and it thanked me for doing that, which I thought was very polite. So I think between the striping, for now, it's a good first step. I think if you look at the speed data without these improvements, and then once you put these improvements in, go back and do another speed sample to gather the speed data from what traffic is actually doing. If that's working, then you may want to consider doing physical bump outs at the intersections to make the crosswalk shorter, makes it safer for people to cross. If you can bump it out by 6 or 8 feet on either side, you're making that crossing time for a pedestrian that much shorter, so it's easier for them to get across Continental Avenue.
Also, this is showing the existing conditions, but under proposed conditions, the driveway that we see to the east is actually now at the west part of the site.
Well, this would be the driveway for the 6 spaces for.
Yes,
people
I'm
that are
talking about for the parking
And then
lot.
there'd be another, correct, there'd be another driveway. That's correct.
So it actually, it should, in theory, maybe discourage people from doing the mid-block, because now it's taking you further away from the intersection, where right now they can come straight across to the open driveway.
Correct. I think if we look at the way we designed this little 6-space reserved area, I think if we have room to put maybe some shrubbery between, we're able to put some landscaping in this area between the ambulance squad parking and the rest of the parking lot. Again, people that do jaywalk, cut across, whatever you want to call it, would have to walk around eventually, because now they got to move their way through shrubs. Again, also in here we could probably put some shrubs or some kind of decorative fence or something to do that to help discourage. I think you're right. The further west we're putting it, now it's really, you're not picking up much. I think the idea is that they're cutting this corner across.
Why wouldn't they cut across where there's a driveway now, the new driveway?
It depends on where.
Doesn't line up.
Doesn't line up.
Doesn't
Right
line
now,
up.
right now the path lines up like this door.
Coming through the parking.
You're right here, right?
That's the existing.
No, the existing one's over here. This is the American Legion, and if I'm coming out of Memorial Park, I'm going to go right across here.
I mean, if you're walking across the grass, but I think the path is here. The path comes out right next to the ambulance corps driveway.
The proposed driveway
It'd be further.
Right there. Right, the path is here.
So they have to cross upway, I don't think
They have to, yeah.
So you think instead of taking a couple of steps to the right, they're gonna go half the block to the left? That's what you're saying?
Well, we're hoping to encourage them to come down here to cross the intersection. We need to do some education with the students, but no, I think the path comes down this way. If they're gonna continue across, we're gonna try to do whatever we can do to discourage them from getting, once they get across, and I don't see the difference between.
I don't think it's stop.
Well, that's it. That's it. So why not just put a crosswalk there? Because that's what's gonna happen. I don't care what you, the kids are not walking from the park all the way to Elm Avenue, down Elm Avenue to get back to the community center, which is over there. They're gonna take a straight shot. Anybody who has kids knows, they go straight.
But there won't be access, is what I'm saying, it's gonna be.
There's gonna be the driveway there, so why
No,
wouldn't there be
it's
access? You
it's
just
going
go right
to be-
across the street.
It's going to be fenced or landscaped in.
The driveway?
The only issue is, it would be considered what's called a mid-block crosswalk. Highly, highly discouraged, especially on a road that's close to, I think, 39
about-
feet wide.
It's like 4,000 vehicles a day.
And so I don't know if you want to promote that. I think if you take the first step, Councilman, first step, the idea was to go back peacefully at Elm and strike, not hardscape. Don't put down the hardscape, curbs, all the above. Just at this point, paint. So strike it, paint it, make the crosswalks a little bit wider, thicker, bump it out when there's no parking, strike no parking, strike parking where it is, and limit the lanes to 12 feet. You probably, I mean, if you wanted to, you could probably go down to 11 feet. I would recommend it, because that gets too tight. If you're doing 25, 30 miles an hour. I think if you do this and start off, phase one.
I understand all this. I'm just talking about practical realities of things. I know what happens when we have events in Memorial Park and people park on Elm and in the library currently, and they walk across. And it's not just teenagers, it's everybody walks across through the parking lot that way. So if you have a parking lot that gets them even closer to where they need to go in Memorial Park, that's what's going to be. It's going to go up the driveway through, and they're going to go across that way. That crosswalk is not going to be beneficial for this purpose. I mean, I know it makes sense on paper, I just don't think it makes sense practical reality if you've lived here and you've seen how people use that area. I also understand that when we're talking about a street the size of Continental Avenue, generally you're not going to put a crosswalk smack dab in the middle, but I don't think many streets the size of Continental Avenue have this kind of split between a park. There really should be one big park almost, you know, with the tennis courts and the Veterans Park and then Memorial Park on the other side. It almost would work better if you were going to plan it out if you didn't have a street there. So that's what you have. You have these two parks that are two separate parks separated by Continental Avenue that essentially are used as one park, and with the community center being built, it's going to be even more than that. I mean, if we're ever talking about the camp coming into the community center and such, then there's going to be crossing back and forth. And I think that we have to anticipate these things rather than just look at the black and white and say, it makes sense on paper. Does it make sense in reality when you're instituting all this? And that's my question. Personally, I don't see it. And it comes from experience of physically having crossed. And I'm sure I'm the only one who's ever done that, but I've crossed from the driveway onto that path.
My concern with that is I think it's going to give people a false sense of security unless we get a handle on the speed on Continental. Because if somebody comes across there, even if it's marked for crosswalk, we know this, that doesn't mean they're going to stop. And coming down the hill with the speed that we see there, that would be more my concern.
Now, look, there's other things that we can do too. For example, at Midland and what is it, Pyle over there, there's the flashing sign, right? So the kids cross to go to the junior high or the middle school. I'm dating myself, the middle school or the high school, and they hit the button, and then there's bright flashing lights. So we could do something like that there. And I'd like to see that in other places too here in River Edge, but I mean, if we're talking about building and outlining these things.
Phasing out the blinking lights.
Why?
Found they're distracting to drivers actually more than they're helpful.
Can't address that. It's the first I've heard of it, but I know
Officer
they're
Diamond
being
brought it up.
used in several places.
Officer Diamond brought it up.
Well, I don't think there's anything that precludes us from continuing to evaluate whether that's something that that would make sense.
Yeah.
So I think the striping is something we talked about for a number of years to do. In and of itself, we'll see what kind of, benefit we get in terms of traffic on it. And then that might lead us to, get the traffic down, then maybe it's something that we can look at. But we'd have to get approval from the county also, would we not? Or is it
I'm
allowed?
not sure about that. I don't know if we'd have to, again, I mean, years ago I came up with a plan to try to connect the two parks, actually put a hardscape in between those. To quell it down, but I think until you quell the traffic, because again, I didn't see the latest numbers as far as the highest speed coming down the hill. I don't know, Lee, if you have.
I don't have it with you now.
But I think you gotta get there first, before you put the hardscape in, because I think you have to do more than just striping, if you want to put a crosswalk. I think you have to narrow it to a point where, then you have obviously less distance crossings, but you have to get the speed down. And again, I apologize, I didn't see the highest rate of speed based on the police reports, but
Yeah, eastbound,
just being that, I would say it's definitely over 40, because you're coming down that road. Because I've seen some of the numbers in front of me, coming out of Paramus and into down Continental, and there's no question.
I mean, is that a question of enforcement then? I mean,
I'm not-
it's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, and if people are regularly going down 40, and we know that our children use this park.
And now trying to get to all that happens is they come 40 and then they break.
That's cool.
I mean, then
I think what the problem is, the road is too wide.
Correct.
Yeah.
For the speed. Right. It doesn't give you a sense of a 25-mile-an-hour roadway, because it's literally 40 feet wide. There's a double yellow line, and that's it. And I think that's the issue. I think once you put in, and again, we stopped it literally just west of Millbrook. You could probably take it up to the intersection of Fifth with some striping. And then a little bit past Elm to see whether or not this works.
Would it make sense, I'm just throwing it out there, if we, instead of doing a bump at the corner, you basically push out that curb line, almost like a bump out along where the proposed parking lots would be.
Right.
yeah, but, right, that's what Robert's saying, start off with
So-
striping.
Yeah,
saying
so,
start with
so that's not showing that, that's just showing the
I
straight
don't want
line,
to lose
right?
Alan tonight, because I think at the last meeting, I said, let's just do paint.
Mhm.
Because obviously, once you get into hardscape, you're talking a substantial amount of money to do this. And if it doesn't work, you spent a lot of money to get to nowhere. Paint is relatively cheap. I know you're gonna argue with me. You still have to maintain paint over the years, so it is gonna be a cost. But I think if you start there first, and then go back out, again, I'm not saying wait years, go back and revisit it 3 to 6 months and see whether or not it works. If it does work, then I think if you choke it
Because the other issue,
where the
people,
park is, I think you're gonna get some benefit.
because people always ask, speed bumps, but even just in terms of warrants, we have too high of a traffic on this.
The volume, I think, is,
Volume is too high.
the limit's
So-
3,000
so
per
that's
day,
gotta
yeah,
be
and I
done.
think you're right.
So the bump outs would not be the,
Originally you were only having Elm Avenue. So if you look at, I'm thrilled that we now have Continental, so I think it's better to work with how we're gonna get them to be safe crossing. They would have crossed if Continental was closed. That's how they work. They're gonna cut through anyway. So we just have to work it out to where it'll be safe.
Right.
With the lineage and all, but I'm thrilled with that was a no-no for a long time, Continental exit thing.
we're doing something like a bike lane over there on Continental that's maybe not painted, but those bumpers or those concrete bumpers on the road, and then that would create a bike lane, and it would significantly narrow down the.
Yeah, I don't know, do you have any kind of a master plan for walking, biking, anything in
No,
town?
but I
Because
think
to connect from different
impact
points of
on
interest.
taking away parallel parking for other events.
I mean, we're
Because
at.
you probably get 30 cars on both sides.
The issue is you don't have enough room. Because you need literally
Yeah, you don't have
you need
8
8 feet, for parking. And you just don't have it, so you go 8, 12, 12, and you need
Less
8.
than- okay.
You have to start shifting the curb line
Is there-
over in order to get the other parking.
Is it wide enough to do, like I was saying, so if you do a bump out at this parking area, and even do maybe like a raised island in the middle, so when people come, they can cross and get in the middle, and then continue, instead of having it one continuous path.
But you have to widen along Continental.
No, so make,
Hold the outside curves and just do
Yeah.
your widening from the inside out.
From the middle now.
Hold the curve on the north, hold the curve
Just
on the south.
basically built from the
Because
inside.
if we're bumping it 10 feet altogether, let's make it 10-foot median in the middle. What, we have 39, or, no, yeah, 30, I believe it's 39. So we have 12, 12, 24. Yeah, 14, 2, 7, so we could do a 7, 6, so 2, 6, so that would but if you do that.
Yeah, but then it's safer. I mean,
No, it is safer to go, yeah.
And then if you do the walkway, they walk to the center, and then they could make a decision whether they want to walk the rest of the way. So they wouldn't be walking 39 feet, they would be walking
212.
That would certainly be safer.
Yeah?
I mean, I think what you're saying, then you would take the travel lane and push it along the curb line. Correct. So the 12-foot lane would run along the curb line. But then you'd lose the park.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we put a shoulder, we're gonna
Then
lose
the
parking.
question is, do you want the traffic running right along the curb line?
The traffic's gonna run anyway, 39 feet is a long distance.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, you're gonna strike it.
Yeah, but it's not straight now, so people tend to drive to the side anyway.
Well, I'm saying, strike, you're gonna pull it to the yellow line.
But then that tends to reduce their speeds.
Correct, that's what we're trying to do.
So, but
Yeah.
we're not at that point. We could do this tomorrow if we wanted to, the painting, and see what benefit that gets. And then as we go into final
And use paint,
design.
don't use.
Yes, not
you don't
thermoplastic,
use
no.
Thermoplastic, when you have to grind it out, just use
And then-
paint, where you could black it out, if it doesn't.
And then we would have a couple months of that if we're deciding to go to final design, where you can modify that section. Any questions for council? Anything else, Mr. Langlover, or Mr. Costa?
No, I think
Or
that's
open
it.
to the public?
I believe it covers most of the comments that were spoken to at the meeting. I think it was a lot of the concerns of the council. Some of the notes that I took down, I think we covered all of it. Basically, 79 parking spaces. And the other thing where I think, and again, that includes the 6 spaces for the ambulance corps. And with the driveway off Continental, then you could have the senior bus either direction, coming in and dropping off, which I think would be a benefit that some of the other schemes would have. So, other than that, I guess, Mayor, Council, if you want to open to the public, let's get there.
Just one more for the record. I'm trying to count the existing number of spaces in the American Legion lot. What is 50? I'm just counting the No, not to say, I'm just talking about the existing Legion lot. It's 12 here. I get between 40-ish.
43, 33 in the 11.
So we have a few more spaces, but they're distributed more towards Continental than the proposed plan.
Well,
You have to, you need, yes.
you're gonna have, what you don't have now, you have dead-end aisles, which you don't have here. You have full circulation. You have, this lot would meet the ADA requirements, which obviously the other lot does not. You have the drop-off, all of the above goes into it, where you're taking a lot that's, quite frankly, is substandard, and you're making it to the current specifications and standards.
How so?
Aisle width to back up 90 degrees, you need 24 feet at a minimum. Your aisles,
to circulate through, make sure the turning radius is proper. Again, your ADA requirement, you need van accessible spaces now, so you need 24 feet, 8 foot for your actual aisle, and then another 8 feet for the other space. So that's 24 feet there. That's not what you have today. And again, two-way driveways, a certain width wide, where you don't have that. And again, circulation around the entire parking area.
So I think anecdotally, by the nature of the operation and by the data, libraries have more trips per hour than community centers.
Correct.
Shorter stays, more turnover.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, the library is more of a 6-day-a-week
And
operation.
we've had a dead-end aisle that's taken that number of trips with the 30-something spaces for a number of years. So it's only an improvement.
Well, I mean, it certainly connects the two. You're going to have pedestrian connection between the two buildings. And my personal opinion, I think you need the 2 driveways. I think it just makes it a little bit easier when you have to disperse the crowd. And as far as kind of, if you have that sort of an event going on at the library or the community center, what's going to happen in reality? You're probably going to have a police officer posted at Continental, and that level of service D obviously would be controlled. If it's that big of an event that you're going to have that much of a backup coming out there.
Would you look to the public, motion open to the public?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody wants to speak, ask questions?
Kenny Lehman, 190 Kenny Avenue. Just a quick question. Probably two. First one I can think of, I was trying to follow the numbers. We don't have the data in front of us, but we can actually going through it. It sounded like rough estimates that you're approximating at 2/3 of the volume for being an out on the Continental side.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wyman, can you come up to the speaker, please?
So, it sounded like what you were saying is that you would estimate 2/3 of the volume would go in and out on the Continental side of the block.
Correct.
1/3.
On Elm Avenue,
On the
yes.
site. And what was the breakup of what you were determining? Of that 1/3, what were you determining would just remain on Elm as opposed to what would go down on Tenny? Because the numbers you had stated, I think, were in the peak hour, 105 vehicles going, say, westward on Tenny Avenue
Correct.
toward the library.
Correct.
And what you estimated that to be.
Yeah, about 5 cars in each direction.
But that seems like a much, so, and even for the 1/3 of volume that you think was coming in and out of the library, for a 5-car increase, it seems like you were estimating that basically the volume on Tenny Avenue is not going to absorb any of that, or very little of that 1/3.
Correct.
Based on the traffic numbers on Tenny, Elm, and Continental, I look at the total, it's about 1,200 vehicles per hour on all 6 directions of the block. And it's about roughly around 10% of the traffic, about 120, about 12% of the traffic is Tenny both directions. I think it was 30-something percent was Elm both directions, and about 59% of the 1,200 total was on Continental. So I divided it up that way.
And so, I'm sorry, what was the increase on that?
About 5 vehicles in each direction.
Even on Elm? Or is that?
Oh, I'm sorry, no, 10. Elm was the other 10, because only 15 vehicles turning in and 15 vehicles turning out, so we'll talk about the south part of Elm. So of the 15 that come in and out, of the 30 that come in and out, about 10 of them would go in and out of 10.
And, the ratings
service?
Year that, year that.
Levels of service are level service A through F. A is about 10%, 10 seconds of delay. B goes to 20, look it up. And the cutoff for C is 25 seconds, so that's why I was hoping everything was going to be less than 25 seconds of delay. In that one case, the Continental Avenue driveway exit was going to have about 28 seconds of delay exiting the driveway during that one weekend.
So how did those numbers,
It's
but how does that increase volume both on Penny and Hotel? How does that correlate to any estimate in terms of the people, the pedestrians that are walking the area? Can we get the quality of spaces walking the area increase as you hire people? So I mean, here's what I'm asking, right? You get a lot of kids looking at that. You get a library. You want to put a community center in there. It probably increase that. And I just want to know, like, given those estimates, which is just volume of vehicles, second situation, is there any thought in there given to how that might impact travel safety walking the area? If zero impact, that's fantastic. If there's more thought given into it, I just want to know, is there a way to, from your analysis that you can give an idea as to what that makes
I mean, the driveway at Elm Avenue, existing right now, it's stop control. So people that are leaving the library today have to stop before they can make a left or a right out. Same with Tenny. Tenny has a stop control approach to the intersection of Elm. People that are traveling north on Elm to make a left into the library today, they have to wait for southbound traffic to clear before they can make the left turn. So these are controlled intersections. When I was there this evening, a pedestrian was walking across. A car was trying, I believe, to make a right turn in. They waited until that pedestrian had finished crossing the driveway, and then they made the right turn.
Is that because you're just doing a 3-year duration, or you're assuming that the peak impact of that traffic increase isn't going to happen for another 3 years? So the question I'm getting to is, you put on the assumption that the project's not going to be completed.
I just made an estimate that 3 years from now, this is what the traffic pattern will be like. So when I do a traffic study for any kind of it gets approved, it gets permitted, all kinds of construction documents, and by the time you build it and occupy and cut the ribbon and open it, it takes time. So it may be 2 years, it may be 3 years. I just estimated 3 years, and then I just added on 1% growth for all the traffic volumes over a 3-year period, compounded annually.
So, Mr. Mayor, there's no thought here that this project's going to extend 3 years then, correct? The original estimates was about 18 months.
It's estimated, you get the 6 months to bidding and construct, you've got a little over a year.
And the actual construction.
About a year, a little over a year, that's what the architect said.
And so it would be 2 years.
In fact, and remember, that's the whole building, soup to nuts. The site work would be done over 3 months, Rob?
Yeah, it depends. Obviously, it's subject to low bid, but it's somewhat substantial of a project. You're not going to get a larger contractor. I would say 3 months tops.
So I was conservative when I projected the numbers out for the year 2021.
And when we compare to present conditions with the 35 cars coming out of the library now, it'll be less under this proposed condition, because less space on that part of the property at that point.
Correct, correct. Right, I didn't, I assumed that it was a virgin site, a vacant site, when I redistributed the traffic. I used the numbers on Elm, the numbers on Continental, grew them to a future year, and then I estimated the number of trips that would come in and out during an event at the community center.
Anyone else? Sure. Yes, just so we can get it on, so get it into the minutes.
I'm on one page, I have
And being turned around, they have talking about almost 400 pins, so I guess I'm confused as to the intent for the book.
I'll give it to you guys. I'm done.
There's been over the years requests for more meeting space. And having a facility like this will allow us to expand more recreation, leisure, other activities to a wider variety of residents. The building itself will have a large room, meeting room. A lot of times we could see the capacity of this room, and we have nowhere to go. There's another large meeting where you have really no space to go. And then again, it can be used for private groups or for considerable. We brought on our new recreation director. She had come from a community center background. Actually, it was a senior center, but it was a fairly large center with a full-day program. So the idea again here would be, or we can bring her in to explain more how she would program it. But it's envisioning basically in the mornings, it would probably mostly the senior citizens. Right now, we pay to lease space 2 days a week at the temple, about $20,000 a year. This way, they'll be able to have access to a facility 9 to 3, 9 to 2. You know, I don't anticipate during the day, during the school year, there'll be much other activity going on in the mornings there. That's like the clients unless there's programs for mothers with you know, stay-at-home moms with children or things like that, or other smaller groups like that. And I think maybe you'll see in the afternoon more programming geared toward school-age kids and adults in the evening. We're limited in the amount of space that's going to be there too. So there's going to be, I don't know what the last configuration was. I wasn't at the last design meeting.
It stayed the same, a little over.
But Carolyn had gone over the configuration.
She did, and the changes did not affect the overall size.
I didn't
of
mean
the
that, but she just, the same number of rooms, or did she put more partitions or something?
Yeah, the last meeting that we had with the architect with Carolyn, we bumped out the large room, made it a little bit bigger, shrunk and condensed the size of the hallway a little bit, made the small meeting room about 5 feet longer, and that was done by shrinking some of the storage area. She felt as though she had enough storage areas, so she wasn't concerned with that. And then what had been called the teen room was merged with another smaller room to make it one large room with that's partitionable, so that you could have, I want to say, it'd be almost like an 800 square foot space. You could have 2 separate rooms if you wanted to, or one larger space, and it could be configured differently.
But it would not increase the occupancy level. Number
No.
of square footage is the same, so it's
No, the
basically-
square footage is the same. It remains the
You'd
same.
have the same square footage, but you have the opportunity to have more, I guess, more
Yeah,
programs.
it condensed the, I don't know, the utility space or the common space, I guess maybe you might call it, and allowed for more meeting space.
And for adults, I mean, whatever,
Carolyn
Carolyn
talked
would-
about having yoga class, things like that.
we're thinking, you know, potentially, she talked about maybe doing some adult education classes,
Yeah.
things like that. And just to provide more opportunities.
Several months ago. So it was Carolyn and Margaret. She wanted to meet with me. It was after last week.
Anybody else?
It was just, it was really her and Margaret.
Because floating around like just ideas kind of gives you this very open-ended, loose agenda, or very, I think it might be easier to communicate to the public, right, that, hey, listen, you're going to build this community center, or hoping to build this community center, right, and these are the things that we want to do, not that, you know, it would be nice to maybe see if we can jam a yoga class in there, or, I like, if you think I'm wrong in asking this, please let me know, but I just think it would just be a little bit more, easier to explain if you said that, you know, we brought in Carolyn, she has experience with all this stuff, this is the stuff that she's done in the past, and this is what she wants to do with the space going forward. It would just be kind of nice to hear what you're doing.
Well, it goes back to when, this has been under discussion now for 8 years? 8 years.
And for 8 years, this is kind of not you
No,
personally,
well,
but for 8 years.
no, I mean, there's the concept and there's reality, and the reality is that there is the need for space, I think everybody up here believes that. How we're gonna do the individual programming, that'll be up to Carolyn, and depending on what, I guess she'll gauge interest from the community also as to what kind of programs are gonna be there. I think just the fact that we're saving, money from not having to lease the temple space, we're giving more opportunities to our senior citizens. And like I said, there's been, I understand what you're saying, but I guess, I think it's kind of hard to figure all of that out right now, like kind of program Monday to Friday, every space at this point. I don't know if that would be possible.
I think my concern would be something, you know, like Ridgeway for building a community center. Somebody told me that the other day, I didn't know that they had one. And I thought the works between Ridgeway for 36 years of building that town, at least once a week for the last 30 years. Right? I had no idea they had a community center. Turns out barely anybody uses it. The thing I hate to say is that, you know, they can have a great place to build it. And there's,
I don't disagree, I think we're,
Just jumping on that, because you mentioned one town. Recently, and sadly, the town news doesn't really cover River Edge anymore, so you get a lot of Paramus information. But you may have seen in the town news, if you read it, that they brought on a new rec director. They had a senior center, and it was membership had been down. No one was using it. They brought on a new director who had experience, and all of a sudden, membership is soaring. And they're actually putting, I think it was $1.2 or $1.7 million into that building because it's expanded. So what our hope is that as we have a rec director who's fantastically qualified in this area, that when the building's there and you have her with the building, I think you may see that programming continue and expand. So, you know, it's kind of field of dreams scenario. If you build it, they will come. I think you'll have that situation here as well. And I think our situation is much different than what you were talking about in Ridgewood.
I think when you, and Mr. Lane is right, there have been issues with some of these larger community centers. I know Ridgefield had a problem. They spent $6, $8, $10 million, and they're, again, this is where we, depends how you define what a community center is, but a lot of those ones that have had the problems are the true community centers that have gymnasiums and a lot of recreational, athletic facilities also, in addition to the meeting space. And I think those are the ones where they've had a lot of the issues in terms of getting people to use them. Yes.
To Mr. Linden's point, at the conclusion of our last meeting, I had asked that it's time for Carolyn to have a spot on the subcommittee, the community center subcommittee, not just as on the peripheral. We talk about Carolyn Beldonza a lot and her qualifications, and I think we need to show respect for those and put her on this committee so that from this point forward, she's part of that dialogue whenever that committee meets, and she can start actually preparing some thoughts and plans, to your point.
And I think that's good. She's had the opportunity to meet with the architect to give her input on interior. I don't see the committee as the committee's constituted now continuing. I think it was to bring it to this point where we have a viable plan to go forward. We can certainly create another advisory group if you want to do that in terms of, you know, but we did create a cultural affairs committee also,
Which needs to be.
which we can do that, and we can certainly start doing that once we know that we're moving forward. And then, again, my hope is when we draft the ordinance, it's bringing together people from all the stakeholder groups, including the school, including the library, including cultural center. So the idea is to become synergistic with these groups, not basically sometimes we have competing programming, even though it's similar. I think once you get all these groups together, I think you'll have a synergy of hopefully you'll have a synergy cooperation with all the groups and expand the program. Just like bringing in schools in too. So,
If the council feels that we're at that point, 2019, then perhaps we need to have a conversation about how to solidify and make sure that she understands what our expectations are for her, so that we start to move towards more of a black and white plan as opposed to a gray.
yeah. But I think the way the building, the size of the building is limited, so that is what it is. She's had her input in terms of how she thinks the interior should be laid out. She's had that, so we're there. It's just a matter of now how you would use the space. So.
When she was here at the meeting and spoke, you know, we had a big meeting, and, you know, gave a couple of ideas of what she would be doing.
Right, but
You know, it's hard to say we're gonna do yoga, we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do this, if people, you don't know that we have them yet. I think you need to, we have the director, it's a huge step, and I think that's how she was hired.
yeah, I want to make sure she's put in a offensive position as opposed to a defensive position. So I'd like to give her the opportunity. I think we need to formalize then asking her to start putting some.
I would say
paper.
that what I would suggest is that by the reorg meeting, and we have a list of people who would be interested in this committee. She is the chair of the committee by orders, so that would be the appropriate mechanism to do it. And I believe, I know, when I reviewed the ordinance, I tried to make it, I modeled it after, sort of the way the library board set up with not mandatory, but certain groups have seats if they want it. The school board, the library, the culture center, and there'll be other people from the community. So, I think just the culture center, and historic commission, they'll have use for the space right away also with some of the events they have now, and less than adequate facilities.
I think that sounds like a good step for 2019.
Yeah, so I think
Formalize
this year
that.
we can start looking now, and for people who might be interested in serving. I don't remember we had, but, sorry.
How many?
I don't remember how many we had in the ordinance. I did 9 total, typical site, right, not too small, not too big. School representative, forget how.
I don't remember, it was the library and, somebody from the Board of Ed, somebody from the Cultural Center, and then it was residents who have, you know, ideally, I think the idea was, to have people from various, like, backgrounds in the arts, painting, sculpting, photography, drama, you know, and try and get them onto that, so.
Yes,
Jennifer, I wanted to,
I do think it's important to bring a person who has the qualifications on board right away. I mean, if we're talking about how we're going to use the space, if we build a big, if there is big program, if you're going to rejuvenate, participation and things like that in town. But my question is, I mean, I do attend a lot of things at the library, which is right now sort of our cultural, our community center. I do yoga on Saturday night. I do participation in evenings. There is always someone there staffing the building. They open, they lock up after you leave. They check the building. Carolyn sounds like a wonderful asset to have as a program director. But what are the plans in place for safety in the building, having somebody just open and close and make sure that kids haven't done some mischief or things like that? What are the
fair question. Well, we know that will have to be done. We're not at that point yet. I think when we determine what the hours of operation will be and things going on, Carolyn will certainly make recommendations with regard to staffing. I don't think we're looking into that until way into 2020 at this point. So something we certainly can look at in the budget season if that's something we want to do. But
is it in the budget at this time?
no, probably not. We have nobody hire to do anything at this point.
So it's just forward planning that if you were.
Well, we can't put money in the budget that we don't spend, so that's we can anticipate it, but we can't say let's hire someone now and then carry that forward.
Good question, Mayor. My name's Tom Hardy, 171 Sunny Avenue. Based on this revised design here, do you have a budget estimate? What is this going to cost average homeowner?
I don't think the budget changed. Your budget will not change.
Can I get a number what it's going to cost us now?
Going forward, I don't know. It's already been incorporated into previous taxes.
We're building a $2.5 million building.
Yes, and 1.5 or almost.
What do we have in the bank?
Was already.
That's and what is going to be our outlay up there? You have about $1 million that's what we call unfunded, and the way this would work is if you went into construction in 2019, we would borrow a temporary note, short-term note, about $1 million, at 2 3/4, $130,000 in interest that we would have to pay for 1 year on that note. It's about $7 for a typical home. Then at some point you would aggregate that with additional borrowing, and you would convert it into permanent long-term debt and pay that off over maybe 10, 15 years. I'd have to know what. Let's say it costs. We said $2.5 million. Let's say $2.5 million or that. The average.
It's not 2.5 million. If anybody else wants to jump in, I'll let them, because.
No, $1 million. So what do we want? So we have $1 million in the bank, we're borrowing $1 million?
No.
$1.5 million?
What we did, and just so you understand, because we went over this at the last meeting quite extensively.
But this is a revised.
Okay. All right. Well, here's what it is.
Happy with the revision.
Yeah. No. Here's what the council has done, and everybody can correct me if they know more. Over the last several years, the council's been putting money aside towards this project. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here. All right, and because you don't want $2.5 million to hit a budget in 1 year. Okay. And when we say that, we're talking about financing. We're not talking about $2.5 million goes into the budget, and, oh, by the way, everybody's got to pony up $2.5 million for next year's budget. You finance it over a period of time. And that's the same what we do anytime we buy police SUV, you pave a road. I'm just saying, just so everybody understands, because I was told it wasn't clear last time. So that's how you go about it. But what we did was, for a number of years, we put aside money, okay? And then as we got closer to this project being ready in the design, we looked at what we had, all right? And then last year we realized, well, we need to add additional monies towards the project because we think we're there. Keeping in mind that what we did was, and I think it was about $800,000 or thereabouts, we went back and looked at prior ordinances. So anytime a council does a project, right, pretty much we have to estimate the cost. We don't know, we get an estimate, and usually they're pretty good, but sometimes there's money left over, right? But you've already borrowed that money, right? You already rang up the credit card. So that money just kind of sits there. So we went through all these unused monies, reappropriated them, and there was a project that was a prior council had planned on doing, and it never got done. But they borrowed the money, so you take that money, we reappropriated it to lower the overall borrowing needs for this project. So that was done. But as we got closer, like Alan said, it was about $1 million, all right? And we don't do that in a vacuum, though, all right? We don't just say, well, just add $1 million on, we don't care, let the taxpayers eat it. No, I'm just explaining. And so what we do is we look at where our trends are going, all right? And we actually have a policy in place that doesn't allow our debt to exceed 11% of the prior year's appropriations. So we're pretty financially conservative in that regard. And even with this additional borrowing and this note that Alan was talking about and this $30,000 interest, our debt payment actually comes down next year. So if that note now, and we had anticipated hitting in 2019, now it looks like it wouldn't hit until 2020. So actually next year's debt payments, actually there's a net reduction in the debt payments. For 2020, I'd have to look at it. I honestly don't know off the top of my head what that number was. I had it for 2019. But all of the down payment for that $1 million or thereabouts, that went in the 2018 budget, okay?
So in essence, we have that money already.
The money's available to be used
Okay.
when we want to, and the beauty part of it was that this year there was a zero tax increase on the municipal side. Next year, I don't know, but the debt payment goes down for next year. So to get to the point to fund this has actually been pretty financially responsible, so that there isn't this, massive tax increase that people would have. In terms of the operating costs, some people, we talked about this, and the mayor talked about the $20,000 a year that's spent at the for leasing right now, the temple, and most of the operating costs in terms of the heating, the electrical, the water will fall into that category. Now, in terms of additional programming, well, there will be an additional cost for that if there's staffing. I think you can look at the library as a model in terms of what they do with pages and various staffing needs. So that's something that you can look at as additional cost. I don't think it would have to be anywhere near as much as what the library spends, because you're not going to have that kind of constant operation that the library does. But again, that all falls into additional quality of life in terms of additional programming for the residents. So that's a little bit different than the actual building cost and the operating cost of the building.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Somebody in the piggyback building.
Oh,
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I mean,
All right, no problem.
we had said this from the beginning, and I think everybody said it from the beginning. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it responsibly, we're going to do it right. That's why it's taking as long as it has, and we've gone as slow. Some years where the budget wasn't good, we didn't put money in, obviously, because we would want to pass on that kind of an increase unnecessarily. So I think, like Captain Barloni said, overall financially, we've been getting stronger, so I think we'll be able to absorb it, and I said we'll have to make decisions about how it goes forward in terms of staffing and programming, and that'll be ultimately how successful it is, because, you know, to work with Carolyn to see what kind of additional work, what kind of support she thinks she needs going forward.
And I do know that she's been going to other centers in the area and trying to get ideas. So she is actively working on it. You know, when I've spoken to her. So, and she did have very good ideas in terms of reorganizing the interior, and I'm sure she'll be working with the architect in terms of the overall materials that go into the build to facilitate its use.
Mr. Mayor, is there a known number as to how much in professional services we've paid for the community center, or how much we intend to pay? Is that my understanding, the 2.6 doesn't include that, or it does?
No, that doesn't include it, but that, anything that's been done to this point has been paid for out of operating.
Do you know how much we paid?
Well, you can tell us a little what we had, how much did we, DMR was 110,000 or something like that. I don't know how much we paid Mr. Costa.
Do you want that number?
Call my office tomorrow. So from beginning to end of the project, on the architect side, it's 119,000. We've already spent, or been about, maybe about, a little less than about half, 60%. But we've appropriated, up to what, did we appropriate, or did we encumber? It's already been encumbered, so it's already been paid for, that 119. And Mr. Costa, what was it? I believe it was 11,000 for survey or something.
Like to hear the architect, I'm gonna have to wait for you.
I'm getting bright ideas. We also charge less per hour, Usually it's 73,000.
On this?
That's what you have to do. It's up to you. But that's design and expect.
Yeah, that's,
17.5.
yeah, it's gotta be start to finish,
Oh.
and so.
But that's, where am I reading this from? 17. I'm reading the wrong one. That's
Yeah,
Howland
it's
Avenue.
about 17.5.
I'm looking at the wrong one. That was Howland Avenue.
If you have, if it's, I don't
So
know,
it was 18,000 for the site plan.
10%. Usually, I would think.
Well, 10% on the site work, not the whole project.
No.
That's what he's trying to get.
No.
So generally,
Usually, the architect is gonna be what? Tops, 10% of the.
this is him finished, 119. That's
Okay.
through bidding, that's through construction. That's
Structural, electrical, plumbing,
Yes,
everything.
right to the end,
Okay.
yes, that was his. And it was assumed that your specialties be based on what the site work costs, which right now we think is around $500,000. So tops would be 40,
Top.
50-ish, 40s.
And again, it all depends on who the contractor is.
Yeah, if you have a better, strong contractor, less direct oversight.
Caveat is, if the council decides to go forward with this project, again, you have the logistics of keeping the library operational. So, my recommendation, again, it's up to council, build the parking lot first and build the building second. And if that is, if the council takes my advice and does it that way, then I need to sit down with the library to figure out what's the best timing for this. I would think the summer is when you want to build this lot. When school is out, the day school stops, you start this project and get this done before school starts.
I guess Councilman Goyer can speak to this because he's liaison, but I use the library a lot. Library does a lot of programming during the summer.
It's their most busy time, actually.
Yeah, so it's not their least, it's their most.
So that would be the biggest impact to them.
And
So
in
we have to
fact, all the
figure
kids
out-
are gonna be across the street at Memorial Field.
They will, because they're on the fence side. We won't let them cross there.
Well, no, you can, well, no, you got to see, there's that, the construction, have fencing around the site, so you can't.
You're gonna, there's gonna be no good time to do this, but the better time is when the days are longer and the evenings are shorter, and you can extend.
But you could, if we were to, how long would it take for you to have plans and specs ready for bidding? That's the first question.
Well,
Because if this was, because the next step after this, the council would have to endorse the concept. And by endorsing the concept, then we would authorize you to make a presentation to the land use board. So that would be the next step.
right, it's capital.
Which we could do that in or I'm gonna say January. It could be out to bid by the end of January.
You wanna-
So you can actually start building it, you can start construction in end of March.
The key is you wanna bid this coming out of the winter, you're gonna
We'll get the best prices.
So whether you do paving, whether you do any capital improvement road-wise, contractors, they'll be going to bed very shortly. You won't see them, most of them will be in the Caribbean probably January and February. And then after they spend their money there, then they start bidding in their projects.
Going on that kind of a schedule, if we're able to start, say, late March or early April, substantial completion will be done before the end of the school year. Right? April, May, June. So by the end of the school year,
The fastest I think you can get a shovel in the ground is probably, let's say June, May or June. But again, if that's the worst time for the library,
back that up, how do you get to June from December? How long does it take, how much time do you need to do the plans and specs?
I would say a month, tops. It's pretty much, I mean,
So you'll be ready to go to bid at the end of
base plan is
January.
done, concept done, it's basically, even a lot of the grading is done.
So here we go. So if you have those ready by the end of January,
Correct,
we could theoretically have an
2
award by
weeks.
the end of February.
correct.
So why would it start in June when we can actually start, say, March 15th? Timeline.
You're right, I'm just saying, by the time you bid it, get it, award it, pre-construction meetings, it would be a tight schedule. But let's say April, March, April.
I don't see why we can, I don't see why try to start in June and be bid in January, that's all.
I mean, if you could shoot for April, then you got April, May, June, the
That's it.
school gets out,
You can have
and you're
substantial
done,
completion
and
by
the
the end of the
library
school
can go
year.
back into, its busy month.
Again, it's your wish is, my command. If you want it done that quickly, then
Well, it's not that
We'll get it
we're
done.
just trying to figure out,
I don't know what the least amount of impact is what you want to try to do to everybody, whether it's the residents, whether it's the library, whether it's the overall scenario, the schools, everybody. Again, because it's a building that has a lot of things going on in it. So as quickly as you can do it, get in, get out, and get them back in.
let's not, most of the work is being done on the existing American Legion site. Most of the site work, and then we have to just
Connect the two. Because you're not building a building yet.
correct.
So their parking lot can remain intact.
Right.
Yes.
It's only the connection between the two. So that's,
That's what I'm saying, so you actually can almost let the library can go unfettered, almost,
Right.
as long as you isolate it
Exactly.
structure-wise.
And then, when you go to build the building, you take a portion of the new lot, you don't totally put the final pavement on the new lot, give the contractor an area where he can stage and do, cordon it off, fence it off, and he uses that, and he keeps the library in motion. That's how I see this project.
And that phasing obviously would be in the specs, or construction phase.
Again, I don't know how quickly you can put construction documents together for the building.
No, I'm not talking about the building, I'm talking about
Phasing of the
work.
site. Yeah, just phase the site, that's all. And then after the fact, whether he put another contract out just to pave the top and move on. Leave it as base. After all the construction is done, you go in and put the top on. Surface. But
Any other questions, comments from the public? Motion to close the public?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so, don't you guys go yet. We need to talk about a little bit how we want to proceed. Again, this is our last regular meeting of the year, so I think we need to at least if the council's applying, like I said, endorse the project, authorize Mr. Costa to prepare a presentation for the land use board, so we can at least get that going in January, and continue development of the site plan, as he's been doing.
I have some concerns. As far as an operating budget, if we don't know the hours of operation, we can't possibly put together a realistic operating budget. Also, what are we doing with what are we doing with the seniors? If we're gonna have 5-day-a-week senior group, realize a regular senior center, let's take North Arlington for example. They have 4 full-time employees plus a part-time employee. Like, I think it's a little unrealistic to think that we're not going to need to hire people. And even if you have the building open and we're not going to do that, and we're going to keep SCORE 1 to 2 days a week and have it as volunteers, you need someone who's a borough employee there in the building while that's going on. And if Carolyn's out sick or she's on vacation, there has to be a borough employee there. I think these are all details that we have to work out before we spend this money.
I can address some of your concerns, actually, because when I've spoken with Carolyn, one of her biggest things was that seniors are able to program themselves. They are fully independent human beings. They don't need other people to help program their activities, and she was adamant about this. So in terms of, SCORE and programming for SCORE, she was very much adamant that the members of SCORE are able to program their own activities.
Anytime I've been down there, it's them.
Yeah, it's not.
I mean,
They
just
do.
happen to be in the temple, but they do everything. They have the 2 volunteers.
Well, that's true, but right now they're a volunteer group for 1 day a week. Are they going to want to basically 2 days a week? Are they going to want to take on basically a full-time job as a volunteer?
Nobody said they were moving to more than.
Well, because, I mean, you're talking about something that's going to happen in the next 2 years.
Right.
There's no way you would be able to come up with that kind of, that level of specificity for the 2019 budget. That's going to be happening in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So you're talking about then putting this off until the beginning of 2020 to come up with a budget number for operating costs.
Some of the concerns that the residents have voiced today have been things that I've heard, not only from the residents on Tenny Ave, but the residents throughout the borough. And I think they are real concerns, and I think we need to have our ducks in a row and know the details before we move forward.
And I would think that the other, at least 4 of us who've been up here for 7 or 8 years, we've been through this. I can't be rooting for Councilman Spiegel, but he's always expressed his support, as has Councilman Davis. I think those are things that are going to naturally work out, because we want the building, we want it to be successful, and we want it to operate to its potential. But to wait till 2020 to even go forward, I think that doesn't make sense either.
What would be the reason of waiting till 2020? Just
So if you want to go through and figure out what the budgets are, yes.
If we had a general idea of what we're going to do with the building, because one of the residents talked about purpose, if we knew, okay, we're going to schedule these kind of classes this many days a week, then we could say, who are we going to hire? Who are we going to have working there? And we could actually say, all right, are we going to need someone who's maybe a clerk, or are we going to need to hire a clerk and then have a yoga teacher teaching
You
yoga?
can put a placeholder in the budget, next year's budget, for $150,000 for 3 part-time people, and that won't have an impact on the budget. So that's what you're concerned about.
Well, I don't know if we need part-time people. I think we're going to have to hire full-time
Well,
people.
we don't know that, and put the placeholder in the budget, it's in the budget, and you can decide how to allocate it if and when you hire somebody. We've done that in the past for a lot of things. We anticipate, some department heads anticipate a new hire in the coming year. We don't know if it's going to be full-time, part-time, 1 person, 2 person, so we put placeholders in the budget. And you've been through 1 budget season, so, it's common practice.
Like I said, so is our plan then to keep score at 1 to 2 days a week, 2 days a week?
I don't
We
think
should be
it's
fluid.
you know.
I mean, with these plans, I think we need to be fluid. We haven't built this community center yet. Once it goes up and we see how it runs, then we can see, what can be programmed. Does SCORE want 2 days, or perhaps they want to move up to 3 or even 4 days? Which days do they want? Who is teaching yoga classes in the area that might be able to provide us a regular class? We can't say that now. If we build it, do you promise that you'll be available to do so down the line? So we have a lot of ideas. I know that Regal now meets at the diner. Okay, that's where they have their meeting room, because they don't have space. They can never find space, so they meet at the diner for
No, and I'm
for
in
their monthly
agreement that we
meetings.
definitely need more meeting spaces.
The community center as constituted will serve a lot of needs here in this town. We can't anticipate everything. It has to have some level of fluidity built in, and I think that's what we're doing here. We're doing our best. There's always going to be questions that anybody can ask, throw out at you, and we're going to be unable to answer. But is that a good reason not to go forward with this center? I think Mr. Lehman has brought up some great points at the last meeting, at this meeting. As we see, they have been addressed by this council. There's been the traffic study done. We've taken all these issues seriously. But the underlying premise that this community needs a community center, I think that's there, and it's been there for a long time. I've been here since 1984. I've said this before. When we moved in, we needed this community center, and we've needed it all along. I don't think it's fair to make the seniors go to the temple and to be kicked out on a regular basis because things arise at the temple and then they lose their time. I think seniors, we want to maintain a strong senior community here in River Edge, and we want to support them as much as possible. The community center is going to meet that need. How specifically will it meet that need? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you it's going to meet it. We're going to be able to program certain things, and then with the extra time, the community center might be rented out for birthday parties and such. That's going to create revenue stream for the town, and it's going to go towards staffing the community center and so forth. There are cameras that can be installed in the community center so that if somebody is not there, it can still be monitored by the police or by some entity. There's...
I don't know of any other government building that has people using it that doesn't have an employee there.
Well, I think there is going to be an employee there. You're talking about the days that she calls out sick as being
So you
initiated.
need
We can
extra
plan for that.
people.
Somebody will be there those days. Well, somebody will have to take over
Carolyn
necessarily.
was hired, more than we planned on doing, we specifically to be over there and to be, that her office was going to be there, and that's where she would be. That's why she was hired, and we went further than we normally would have to get somebody with that place in mind.
I mean,
But she's going to be there.
we do have government facilities that are open without people there. I mean, there's meetings that are held here where there's no borough employee, particularly at the time that the meeting's going on. Same at the, in the safety room, public meeting room over here. So we do have that quite often where the buildings are open and accessible to the public without actually a borough employee being present.
Well, the police department's downstairs.
Yeah, but they're not.
We know what's going on in this room.
Yeah, they're not here physically. I mean, there's no physical presence by a borough employee, so it is. But again, I think you could look at the library as a model in terms of part-time pages and things like that. And again,
it's
it
going to be
depends on the
programmed,
day-to-day.
right? It's going to be programmed, so you're going to know that from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. there's going to be a yoga class. For that time, we make sure as a borough that there's going to be somebody in the room there.
I mean, we had somebody for years whose job it was to go turn the lights on down at
Yeah.
JBG,
that was
right?
their job, or to go and open the bathrooms at Memorial.
I think these are things that small towns that are trying to do things like this have to take into account that maybe a bigger town won't have to. With a bigger town, you have to hire somebody 24/7, to look over these things. I don't think that's necessarily the case here, as long as you think about these issues beforehand. And I think over the course of the next year, as we're building it, we're going to address a lot of these issues. We're going to think about these issues.
You also used the library as an example. The library has not only the part-time employees, but also numerous, how many full-time employees? Quite a few, right? Yeah. So you're talking, when you hire a full-time employee, you realize that you're also talking about not only the salary, but also fringe, which is, for a public sector employee, you calculated 60%.
I don't anticipate a lot of full-time employees to stay at the community center.
No, I wouldn't think so. It's not like the same level of operation that a library has, and
And there's children's librarian, there's a research librarian, they're specialized.
And the library is 3 times as big as well. I mean, you're talking about 17,000 square feet or 15,000 square feet as opposed to 6 and change. So a little over twice as big.
Well, I'll just to give you an example, I know like the community center in Edgewater has 5 full-time employee stations
Also,
there.
about 25,000 square feet, it's huge, it's not.
Well, the community center in Richfield has full-time employees there, I know. And that was used as an example, and whether, yeah, it's being utilized as much as it could, and
If
that's
we had
an example.
5 full-time in a 6,000 square foot building, I think that would.
No, and I wouldn't advocate for that, but I think if you know what you're going to do, you can say,
But I
okay,
said, you can
this is.
assume one more full-time person and put a placeholder in the budget, and it would be.
I mean, what is your worst-case scenario? I mean, if you're concerned about the cost, like the mayor said, you could project out your cost and put it as a placeholder.
Well, yeah, and I think we should, I'm just saying I think we should do that, and I'm not saying I'm against moving forward with a project, I'm saying we need to know all these things before moving forward, I think. I think the details have to be worked out before spending all
I
the
don't
money.
necessarily agree, and we're gonna keep talking in circles. So I'm either make a motion to bring this to the land use board.
Look, I don't agree or disagree. I think we are talking in circles. I think it's what it's coming down to. I think everything that you're saying we ought to take into consideration. I think we've taken into consideration over the past, at least 2 years that I've been sitting on this board, and it's been talked about. These things have been spoken about, but I think the consensus is that you can't really plan these out to the decimal point at this point. You have to take the steps, and the first step is building it, and then we're going to work some of these other issues out, knowing full well that the idea is that this is going to be a fully functional, staffed community center that's going to serve the needs of this community on a regular basis during the day, during the week, and during the weekends as well.
We had 75 people from last time to give us comments. We don't have 75 people tonight. Yes, Sean.
That might be because the notice just came on Saturday.
Okay.
Only residents,
need to get-
who are the residents received, only who live in the immediate area?
It was more than the area, but it was.
240 letters that were mailed out. Well, I'm on Elm Avenue, or the other, isn't that negative? 240 that were sent out.
Anyway.
You're not within the
Council's
distance.
pleasure.
I live closer than you do, and I didn't get a notice. So, you're not in the distance. No, I'm not 200 feet.
Now, one of them make a motion,
What's that?
since you've been so polite.
I'd make the motion to refer to the land use board.
And let Mr. Costa continue with.
Yeah, and let Mr. Costa go ahead and do the specifications so that we can get moving.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Mr. Costa, you can have. Mr. Klein, thank you for your input. And Kenny, I think your comments were very helpful. I think we got a much better plan than we had when we started it.
Thank you.
You need me at the land use board
We,
to make the same presentation?
probably, I'm gonna, speaking of Mr. Lehman.
I think from the traffic pattern, I agree with you. I still think it was a great deal of uncertainty as to what was being actually used this for. Okay, that's not necessarily the answer. My only question here is, what are the next steps? Is there another discussion with the public, or
Yeah.
going out?
Yes, it moves to the land use board where there'd be another
But I don't.
discussion.
No,
Well,
I don't know what's going to the land use board.
it means that we're gonna proceed with the plan as presented. And concurrently with Councilman Speed's, suggestion, we will populate our, cultural affairs advisory board. And they'll work in parallel to do the programming in concert with Carolyn and the other, groups in town.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, you're the land use, you have this other committee, and then during that other meeting you had, there were discussions, we made some recommendations from the Shade Tree Commission. When do we get our meetings, conversations, I mean, we should have time, or, I feel like sometimes we never get informed, we never invited to one meeting and update after that last one. So, I don't know if that's something we should just work directly with you.
And you're welcome to come to the,
We can come, I mean.
Well, no, let me finish. The process is supposed to, when we have significant, application for development, they're distributed to all the major commissions and departments in the borough. Meaning, something like this would go to the police department, it would go to the fire department, it would go to Shade Tree. By law, it's supposed to go to Historic Commission because by law, they're supposed to get all copies of applications that, for the land use board. And everybody gets those copies, they all have the opportunity to write comments, and if they want to come and actually present testimony at the board hearing, they're allowed to do so. The difference with this hearing with the land use board, because it's a public project, it's not the equivalent of a public hearing for a private project. And the board's not there to approve it or disapprove it. They're supposed to look at it, and they're looking at it from the capital budget perspective. They're also looking at it for any other recommendations that they think they would make. I think, based on Mr. Klein and Mr. Costage and EMR, who've been involved from the beginning, and based on the comments from the public, we've anticipated, we've been brought to our attention a lot of significant issues. We've done our best to address them. The biggest concern, I think, to a lot of us was the safety with the traffic. And I think this went as far as we can go at this point to address those concerns. So the other things I think could be worked out with Mr. Costa or in concert with the land use board.
Mayor, just to touch base, the traffic calming ideas that were floated, are we going to discuss that in the next budget meeting? How are we going to proceed
you're right.
forward
I
with
think,
that? I don't think we
No, I
we
think,
decided
that's
that.
the point. I think what we should do is, when's the next traffic safety?
They just had one, it wouldn't be until next
Well,
year.
maybe we can call one, or just schedule, well, we'll have one scheduled for January, and we'll let Mr. Costa present the plan to them, so.
Which plan we present?
No, this was just the striping plan.
This is striking,
I think we will do that.
striking of the island or striking the sides?
Well, that's what they'll be.
They'll decide?
Yeah.
And then they'll report back to us?
Yeah, and we'll proceed with the striping plan anyway.
Yes, right. Just move basically take it to the middle, the south,
Well, what I would suggest is that, we keep Mr. Klein involved, touch base with Chief Purdy, and the traffic division over there, get their input, and then we'll bring it to the traffic safety committee, and, hopefully we can get, before we get to land use, so everybody would have.
Who's the liaison to the traffic?
It'll be something new in January.
You'll be pleased.
No, I'm just saying, I don't know if it's prior.
No, it'll be in January.
It'll be in January.
I would expect, or, all things being equal, we'd probably get this to the land use board towards the end of January.
I guess my question would be, any specs we put together is kind of a part of that.
Well, I think it is, and pending that we get final concurrence with the PD and input from the traffic. Everything, you can proceed as you presented it, and it could be tweaked based on their comments and anything that may come up before the land use board.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if we're putting together specs for line striping, is that contractor going to be responsible to do the line striping on Continental and build the parking lots, or is that
Well,
separate?
Mayor, I'd like to speak this for a moment. It's my hope that we would do the striping regardless of our schedule for construction or a lack of schedule for construction. It would be my hope that we would get that striping done as soon as,
I think there's two different.
council can review
I
what
think
traffic
there's
safety
two
is.
different things. I think
So
we're gonna
two
do
separate things.
striping and traffic calming as we think it is. In fact, I think it's time to also develop some more data. And then if we're gonna change that or do any more permanent changes, like you said, moving the curb, then you incorporate that into
But I think that number will be low enough that you could probably do it with quotes.
the stripe. Yes.
Right.
Because it's just paint, right?
Yeah.
So,
I'll take some of this. I always ask Alan, because I don't think Leonardo da Vinci or someone
Oh,
like
just
Picasso
paint.
or anybody who's painting
Just
this borough.
We're gonna get Alan a little roller, a little. They could.
And in the past, DPW has done things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it could happen, as long as you mark it out, I think.
Who's painting the crosswalk at the Kindercamack and Wayne? Now that we have a nice sidewalk
Yeah,
there.
Contract.
Is that happening anytime? They finished all the work, right?
Yes.
Looks like.
Yes.
Get those stripes down and That people cross safely.
After work, and I didn't get the,
But is there a temperature issue with, Rob,
I think there was a
temperature issue with the thermal?
Could be a thermal, yeah, could be an issue.
But if we can get it painted,
Well, I'll get some paint down temporarily.
well, the county will do it if we ask them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness, Mr. Connell.
I will call them.
Thank you.
All right.
Anything else?
Anything else? Mayor,
No, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Anything else from the council? If not, I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Sorry.
When will we be setting our budget meetings for next year? Because we don't meet again now. for the remainder of
Alan will
the year.
say, yeah, he gave us the, it's basically the same.
It was emailed.
It was?
Was it
Oh,
email?
I didn't get it.
I didn't get it either.
It's
I don't
basically
know,
we do
I feel like it was an
planning every
email
Saturday from there,
starting
and then,
the first Saturday.
yeah, and then we decide we go along.
Okay, because I didn't get an email, that's why I asked. Usually we
Oh.
are
Yeah,
notified.
I got the meeting date one, but I did not get for
Right.
the,
I forgot, Stephanie asked me 3 times, she had given me a,
meetings for the council meetings. Did you get the email for that?
but this doesn't have serious
Council meeting?
I mean, this doesn't have budget meeting dates.
No.
Stephanie?
That was the other.
You make sure that, council, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Well, did you, does everybody have a copy of this?
That was emailed to us.
Okay, this is the regular meeting schedule for 2019, so you just wanted to approve it?
Everybody good with that?
Okay, over here.
Yeah.
But was it checked for religious
Yes,
holidays?
yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Is there a second?
And we're still the first, we're still the second?
Correct.
But Alan, if you could see if that budget meeting schedule.
The same schedule we have every
The
year.
first Saturday in January? Okay.
Mirrors last year's schedule.
Okay, thank you.
And this
Will probably change.
Okay, I just,
so is there any other questions about the,
thank you.
all right? Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes, yeah, I'll be here. That's a closed session.